And welcome. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield. The 2024 season for Baker Mayfield might not feel like that big of a deal, right? Because Baker Mayfield just got paid. He's got a fresh, crisp, newly printed $100 million contract, and he signed for 3 years. So the Buccaneers made a relatively long-term-ish investment in him, so it may not feel like a big deal. Plus, he's coming off a career season. Here's the thing. This next season for Baker Mayfield, the 2024 season, just for him on a personal note, will be the most important season of his career, maybe since his rookie season. Because if Baker Mayfield takes a big step backwards next year, right, and reverts back to some of the inconsistencies that had plagued him early in his career, whether it be game to game or just season to season, where if you look at his statistical kind of breakdown of his career season by season, he has good seasons and then he has bad seasons, then he may follow with another good season and then follow with a not so good season. If that happens for Baker Mayfield next year, where he goes from this really good season he had in 2023 to a not so good season or borderline bad season in 2024, then everybody, the narrative, the media, everybody around covering Baker Mayfield will say, yeah, there he is. Knew it. And last year will look like a fluke. If Baker Mayfield can string together, and unfortunately for Baker, a lot of times, perception is reality. If Baker Mayfield can have himself a good season next year, doesn't have to be as good as the season he just had, all he really has to do is put up decent statistics. I would say somewhere between 25 and 30 touchdowns, and then somewhere between 5 and 12 interceptions with roughly 4,000 yards and a playoff appearance. If Baker Mayfield can put that performance forward and on tape next season, then he will have back-to-back good years as a starting quarterback. He will have had a good season as a starting quarterback, got paid like a low-end franchise quarterback, and then performed up to that contract. And if Baker Mayfield does that, the narrative on his career will be completely reset. Right now, the narrative on his career has begun to be reset, right? People are starting to believe. They're looking like, maybe, but nobody is in, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people are not in full belief that Baker Mayfield is completely revitalized his entire career, right? Right now, he had one good season following some bad seasons. If Baker Mayfield can make it 2 consecutive seasons in a row, then he becomes a little bit more bulletproof, right? He becomes a little more Teflon. He earns a lot more cachet because then that becomes the narrative and that becomes the pattern, right? Then this last season, 2023, being a good year is not an outlier. That's the norm. That's what we can expect. So just forecasting way ahead. If Baker Mayfield has a good season in 2023, which he did, then has another good season in 2024, he buys himself some grace and some leeway if he has a bad season in 2025. Because then when he has a bad season, or if he has a bad season in 2025, everybody can look at it and say, well, yeah, he had a bad year, but he had 2 good years prior, showing that that's the pattern, and then the bad year becomes the outlier. As opposed to now, if he has a bad season this year, he just had 1 good season in Tampa, and people can look back on his Browns career and say, yeah, well, that's classic Baker. He's up and down, right? He's got potential. He does some good things, but ultimately, he's not consistent, and he's not a franchise guy. This next year for Baker Mayfield, while he does already have the contract, and I don't think the Buccaneers are going to let him go, release him, or anything like that if he struggles next year, it is the most important season of his career, because if he has a good season next year, he has the opportunity to cement himself as a starting quarterback in the National Football League for the entirety of his career. Because even if Tampa Bay gets sick and tired of him and eventually, at some point, does not want to continue their professional relationship with him, if he can have back-to-back 2 straight good seasons in Tampa Bay, 1 bad season will not offset that, and some other team will look at it and be like, he showed you what he could do in back-to-back years, and he will have a market developed for himself. He will completely rewrite the narrative on his career. For Baker Mayfield, not even just for the Bucs, for him as an individual, the 2024 season will be the most important dictator of what his NFL career is going to be. If he can duplicate his performance from last season in terms of team success as well as individual statistical performance, he will likely be viewed as a franchise quarterback, even if it's on the low end of franchise quarterback scale. He will be likely viewed as a franchise quarterback for the remainder of his career. So it's a very big season for Baker Mayfield.